Hey, it's Soul with what for now is going to wrap up my coverage of Diablo Immortal in a very casual, non B roll, a sort of improvised review. That means it's just going to be you and me talking, basically. Uh, and I want to warn you now that this is not an objective review. This is how I felt while playing the game, with the challenges that I met and the things that I like and I didn't like and the annoyances because it's not objective. I'm going to take a moment to describe my player behavior so you can get a better understanding of where I'm coming from, or you can use the navigation thing to skip that part and get to the review stuff. And of course, like the video, maybe not subscribe to the channel because I probably won't be talking about Diablo Immortal after this. So I'm who you would consider to be a pretty relaxed or a casual Diablo player. I played all the games and I played all the expansions, of course. I've explored all of the classes from the previous games, as if that matters, although I'm partial to the Necromancer, as if that matters too. But yeah, I like pet-based builds in these sorts of games. I never really seriously played like the hardcore stuff, the hardcore modes. I don't care to PvP. And after a certain point, like once I've been able to explore the different set bonuses, like the gems and the rune word and the legendary combinations and all that stuff, my interest tends to taper off. It tends to plateau. Pushing to do like the hardest version of content to me is still doing the same content, so it only gets so stimulating to me, at least the way that I play. So you're not going to catch me on leaderboards, and I've only streamed Diablo games like this and 2 Resurrected and 3 and all that. I've only done that like a handful of times. So you could say that my enjoyment of Diablo is very personal. I solo, I turn my brain off, I turn on something from Netflix and I just kill stuff. That's pretty much me. And I've also played a lot of mobile games, free-to-play mobile games, and I consider myself to be like reasonably experienced with that free-to-play model and how it works. Like, how do the loops work, and where does the psychological warfare begin and end, or does it end? And where does it fit in the design of whatever given game? Like the cash shop in Diablo Immortal is an almost intrinsic part of the game. So I'd be lying to you if I said that you could simply ignore it or its consequences outright. But I'd also be misleading you if I also said that there's literally nothing about the game that you can enjoy because of the cash shop. I truly believe that. So I'm going to talk about it a little bit more throughout this review, and I'll just say this here: it is over the top to have this kind of monetization in a game where long-term farming and RNG and gambling is already, even before the shop, even without it, it's like the foundation of what Diablo is. But I'm stopping short of getting emotionally charged over the topic because I'm just here to give like this casual review. I'm not here to rile you up. Diablo Immortal is Diablo. From the movement to the gameplay and to the endless farming and the experimentation and sometimes mechanics that can suddenly kill you dead. Like, this is the loot-based game that you've been used to playing for years and years and years that the Blizzard team has successfully recreated. But there are some differences and additions though. Like, there aren't acts really, or they're not exactly called acts. They're just like big zones, although those aren't very big either. There are actual dungeons, although calling them dungeons would be a bit generous. Like, they're more like 3 to 5 minute long hallways with some tougher mobs and bosses inside with extra loot. And here's kind of a big one. It's a persistent outdoor world. So sometimes you're killing mobs, and sometimes, maybe they'll help you out. Or someone might be dragging mobs to you and then you get killed by that. Or sometimes you might see a rare on your minimap and you're like, ooh, let me get that. But by the time you get there, someone else had already killed them. So it's very MMO with that respect, but it's also something that's new to the Diablo franchise. There are even outdoor world bosses for non-groups to band together to defeat or be defeated by. as it really is too much for just one person to take on alone. Okay, you know, there are actually a lot of differences with different game modes, and you know, there's like group raids, there's factions, there's a cash shop, and the fact that this is primarily a mobile game with a PC port that's currently in beta, the main takeaway is that this game it still manages to play like a Diablo game, which challenges you to collect the best loot, to find an awesome build, and to beat up bad guys. With its features, there's also a lot of multiplayer interaction that was added, both co-op and PvP stuff that I would consider to be, you know, again, new entries to the series. And I'm not super into all of that stuff because it actually just feels kind of artificial. It feels extra, and it doesn't feel very significant either. In Diablo 3, for example, I'm used to leveling up, to farm up gear, to raise my Paragon level, and to use the best legendary gem combo thing that I can get. So using pretend numbers, let's say that each of those parts makes up, you know, 25 or whatever percent of the game, equaling 100%. And what the Diablo Immortal team did here was to kind of water down or to split up that 100% even further with things like gear slot upgrades and this Heraldric power-up screen where you got to collect gems to power that up, and these shadows and immortals ranks that you need to work on, and this heliquary or heliquary that you need to raid for and develop that too. Like all of these things that give additional stats when you progress down these, you know, these numerous progression tracks. The game modes, the game modes themselves, they try to be interesting, but in the end, all they translate to are extra stats. They're just small contributions to my overall power that I feel like I have to participate in anyway, because in gaming these days, you know, min-maxing is normalized. Opportunities equal expectation. Like, you have to do these. Meanwhile, legendary gems, the most talked about progression track, it dwarfs all those other things that I was just talking about, with the caveat that, you know, it's a little deceptive here. Okay, it's very deceptive here that going down this sort of path is extremely long. Like, even in the context of whaling, you know, that is to pour tons of money into the cash shop, legendary gem upgrades take a ton of actual farming and have an extremely high potential for power that, again, dwarfs all the other progression tracks, making the competitive side of the game seem really imbalanced and really out of whack. It favors one gameplay side over all others. And folks have mathed this out to measure the average dollar amount that it would take to, I guess, max your character, as well as the time that it would take to go down this free-to-play route. Funny enough, though, progression, if you don't participate in the in-game shop at all, it feels kind of fine, actually. Like, if you don't bother with that stuff, like, you'll participate in as much as you can, wherever you can, and you're gonna earn small bits of scoria and gems and platinum and hilt, and that's just a few of the currencies in game. And you can slowly work your way into these harder difficulties. But you're playing the long game as it was maybe intended, because this is a mobile game. It's the standard fare of this sort of thing. It's funny because Diablo Immortal is, again, a Diablo game, but it's also most definitely a mobile free-to-play game with all the trappings. Speaking of mobile, I did try it on the phone, and very quickly into it, I was just not feeling it. Like, as in physically. Like, doing this sort of movement all the time, it's just not for me. Like, I even tried to get a quick set of bounties in while I was getting my car washed the other day, and I was like, nah, I couldn't really get into it then either. Playing on the PC with a controller has been very comfortable as a necromancer. It makes me wonder how, like, Diablo 3 plays on a controller now. Something similar to Diablo, you first have to complete the story to truly open up the game's features. And there are a lot of features and game modes. I mentioned like some of them. So my main goal at the time was to at least check out like the game features as I went along. That seems to have been the game's intention. But my personal mission was largely to, you know, level. As soon as I completed my first dungeon to defeat the Mad King, there was like a quick splash that I should check my notifications because there's a new offer on the cash shop. Now that's a Typical, very typical mobile practice. But I already decided, before I started playing that I was gonna go the free to play route. I think the beef that I have with these particular offers is that they're centered on crests. In fact, a lot of these offers, from the bundles to the battle pass, are all about them crests, which get you better loot from them elder rifts. And ideally, at least the way I'm seeing it, if I'm strategizing this in my head, you shouldn't use these until you're at a very high level and you're hitting a wall. Like, you can't progress. That's when you use the good stuff in the hopes of getting decent gear at the latest point possible, but not everyone knows that when you first start playing the game and you're offered these things like right away. Like, here we go. You and I can get into this in the comments. That's no. Crests can be used at any time because you can get extra legendaries that you get early on, but after I played through, I didn't pay a thing and I didn't have any problems. So no, I don't see the use of crests before you hit a wall to be of any use at all. Whatever the case, I don't like the shop content, straight up, because all it offers are chances to roll for stuff without any guarantees unless you use what I believe are 50 legendary crests, which are earned from playing the game / paying for extra reward tracks, or eternal legendary crests, which are the same thing, but they're bought directly from the shop and they're counted separately. So once you get 50 or use 50 of those, then you get this guaranteed gem. So that's like almost $500 for a 5-star gem and 50 chances to get a 5-star gem. Even if I spread that across like months and months and months, years of play, it just doesn't seem worth the trouble. But offers to start buying into it, again, are just a few levels in, and that's what a lot of folks on social media have called like shameful and scummy and disgusting and all sorts of SEO words that go great on titles and YouTube thumbnails. Ooh. Thankfully, I play at a level where spending any amount of money wouldn't make me enjoy the game more. I just call the shop something to ignore. So let's move on. As some of you Diablo veterans may already know, your first playthrough on the normal difficulty is just a long introduction to the game systems and the class that you're playing. And it's a pretty good romp, actually. It's easy enough to swap out skills, you can find yourself some sort of synergy, there are a lot of skills. I had this hybrid corpse lance and pet build, so I was moving in to generate corpses and then I let the projectiles just fly around as I hid behind my skeletons and my mage person. So as I leveled and I hit new milestones, the game gave me a whole bunch of freebies on its battle pass feature. Like, from it, I got gear, including legendaries, I got gems, and I got all sorts of garbage that I didn't really know what to do with at the time. So I'm actually impressed by the number of different activities and tracks that are available in the game. Quantity kind of helped in this case. It's like every few levels I had to take a break from the action, and I actually had to because I was hitting these level requirements that I hadn't met yet. But at the same time, I'm being introduced into these new things, these new game modes that did propel me to that next milestone. Very clever. There are bounty-style quests, which Diablo fans should be familiar with. There are MMO-style quests that have you like escorting people and following others without being seen, and of course, killing 50 things to get 10 heads or something like that. The periodic unlocks of features and reward tracks and progression systems, it's very mobile gaming. That's how they get you. But it did have me hooked because, in this case, I'm able to just keep playing. The nature of this being a mobile game, it had the thought in the back of my mind, like, at what point am I going to run out of, I don't know, Nephilim energy? Like, when is the game going to, like, wall me up, hard status, like halt my progress until I watched an advertisement or purchased the battle pass? So as of this writing, I'm level 60 and I hit my first Paragon and then I abruptly stopped. So, like, I've opened up the game, but I haven't really gotten neck deep into it either. And I haven't done Battlegrounds because PvP, it's really not my thing. It just doesn't interest me here. So what is post max level kind of like? Because again, I only dipped my toes into it. And as far as I've seen, it's pretty much the same thing, just a little bit harder. Because with a few clicks, you can raise the difficulty in the outdoor world. It's like adding torment to Diablo 3. But then I ran into an issue that I found it really distressing for me as a solo player, because all of a sudden I couldn't run dungeons. You see, when you try to run into a dungeon on the hell or the higher difficulty, the button to go in, which usually is lit up, it's not lit up. And that's because you need to be grouped with one or more people to enter these tougher dungeons. Now, I saw this earlier while leveling, and I didn't really think much on it. Like, I thought it was this, special group-centric thing, but as soon as I got to max level, I figured that it was going to open up for little old me. Only it didn't. It's like, imagine playing Diablo 2, and you're playing through the story on Nightmare or Hell mode, and the room to Mephisto is like right there, but you can't go in because you're not in a group, and you have to be in a group. Or imagine playing Diablo 3, and you can't run greater rifts higher than 50 because you're not in a group. Or you can't complete all the bounties in a given act because one of the bounties needs you to kill one of them bosses, but you can't fight it, buddy. You can't get into that area because you're on Torment 1 or higher, and you have to be in a group to complete it. It's ridiculous. Some folks are just annoyed by that. They're just annoyed, and it's not a big deal. Folks like me are pretty much locked out of dungeons higher than normal difficulty, and there's no battle pass. There's no dollar amount that I can pay that'll get me past that, and I'd never pay it anyway, but see what I mean? Like, a while ago, I was playing Final Fantasy XIV, the MMORPG, and I had to complete a group-based raid in order to progress with the main story. Like, I was, locked. I had to go through this. And at the time, my free time for playing games like this started at 1 a.m. in the morning. So there was no getting groups during that time frame, and I straight up couldn't progress. Now, that's not the same thing as what we're seeing here in Diablo Immortal, but I'm just trying to make the point that locking people out of content just because I can't or won't find a group, that risks alienating people, and I feel alienated. I can play Diablo 2 alone, no problem. Diablo 3, I need an internet connection, but I can still play it alone. I can crank it up to Torment 16 and suffer, and the game will tell me that I shouldn't be playing in this mode, but not here. So now I've got to go this kind of roundabout way to play outdoor content on Hell mode, which I can do, but then I gotta go back and complete dungeons on normal for the sake of filling out my battle pass. And as for running these harder dungeons, I can certainly suck it up and just group with people, like deal with it, Soul. I can follow the design of the game. It just doesn't sit well with me, though. It's the same as how some folks don't want to or care for PvP or these group raids or the monetization path to get those legendary gems. There are compelling reasons to not play this game. But at the risk of speaking broadly, the free part of this game, it's pretty good. It's great. It plays well. There's a good bit of optional content, and while the progression tracks are really slow, almost infuriatingly slow, don't forget that the progression in free-to-play mobile games is always infuriatingly slow. But I do love the fact that, unlike other mobile games, you can just keep playing if you feel like blowing up monsters. It's the rewards that are gated, that are limited. So ultimately, I don't recommend Diablo Immortal as a main game, which stinks for the people who've really bought into it early, and not quite understanding how long of a road it is to maximize their characters. I think there needs to be some time for the game to mature, and we get a better understanding of their development roadmap so we can make more informed decisions. But for those folks who just want to, I don't know, like throw in half an hour a day into this game, the people who are experienced with how free-to-plays work, it's a good side game that threatens to be a main game. I hope that makes sense, maybe. So that's it. That is my lazy non-B-roll review, and I thank you for listening. I'm very grateful. I apologize for the many stutters. I feel bad if you actually watched me, hi, but if you could like the video, again, this will probably be my last Diablo Immortal video coverage that I do, and that'll be it from me. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.